Now we have our Santa is real variable here, and supposing this is a real program, and it's a program that Santa uses to deliver his toys, because he's a sophisticated operation, he's working every single day of the year, and he uses massive computing power. He's a really sophisticated PHP program to help him because he's not getting any younger. So how would we calculate this value here? Where would this value come from? The value of this variable, rather. Well, what we might do is we might have an age variable, and for every child we might check whether their age is less than a certain number, say 8. So if age is less than 8, Santa is real. So let's put that in here, and let's just put age up here. For now, just take that out. So we can see here that we're using the comparison operator, which is the less than comparison operator, and we know that the comparison operator takes 2 operands and returns a Boolean value. So supposing age was assigned the value of 5, so we set age to 5, and then Santa's real is going to be, so let's just check. Let's just output the value of Santa is real now and see what it is, and you should be able to guess. And you can see it as true. Because the age is less than 5, Santa is real. So you can see how we use different types here to build up pathways through our program. So we can go back here now to put back in our original if Santa is real and it's Christmas Eve, and we'll just make Christmas Eve, we'll just set that to true. Run our program again, and it says put presents under tree, because the child is of the age where Santa is real and it's Christmas Eve. But I suppose we could always update our Christmas Eve as well. Let's make that a bit better. Let's add a date variable today, and let's just use the date function of PHP. And you don't need to know how this works now just to appreciate what this does, but you can say that you can just take it that date, if we pass it this z value, it's going to return a number which is the day of the year. Now it's going to return that as a string, so we need to change that into an integer, so we use this int to convert that into a string. And don't worry if that's a bit confusing, if you're not sure how that works, just take it that this returns a number. So let's just echo that there, echo today, and let's just take out this echo down here for now, and let's just see what this does here, today, and echo today. Okay, let's run it. So 327 is today, so it's the 328th day of the year, because we start counting at 0 as often in computers. It's something to watch out for, and because today is 24th of November. But Christmas Eve is going to be the 358th day of the year, which would be, in computer counting, that's 357. So let's just set Christmas Eve to whether today is equal to 357. I hope I have that day correct. This way I need to do testing. This is where computer testing comes from, because if I get that day wrong, it's going to be a absolute global catastrophe. So Santa has some of the most robust programs in the world, because he can't get anything wrong, but he's the best program in the world as well. He's hundreds of thousands of elves working on the programs. So Christmas Eve is being assigned this value, and we're using this comparison operator here, the equals, and we're checking whether today equals 357, and that's going to return a Boolean value, and it's going to be passed to Christmas Eve. So we know that Christmas Eve is going to be, let's pass that to var dump there and see what that gives us. and of course it should return false because today is not Christmas Eve, it's only 24th of November, and indeed it does return false. But if today was 357, then that would return true. So we have these two variables now here that tell us whether Santa is real and it's Christmas Eve. Now supposing Santa is working and he works every day of the year, not just whether it's Christmas Eve or not. So we've already looked at that. He works on the toys and list if it's not Christmas Eve. But when he's working on the list, he flies to every roof of every house and he checks to see if the children are being good or not. So when he does this, he lands on every single roof, even if it's not Christmas Eve, if there are children in the house. He doesn't bother if there's no children. So, but when it's Christmas Eve, he lands on every single roof because he can't take a chance that there might be a young child in that house. It's too much, there's too much at stake, it's too risky. So he lands on every single house on Christmas Eve and he checks. But when he's building up the list during the year, he only lands on houses that he knows that there's young children in. So this condition is going to be if Santa is real or it's Christmas Eve, we need to land on roof. So you can see we've used the logical OR operator here. So if either of these conditions holds, then he lands on the roof. So if one of these is true, so it only needs one to be true. With AND, both need to be true. But with this, only one needs to be true. So in our case here, we know that one of these conditions is true because the child is 5. So we can just see what happens. And indeed it says land on roof. Suppose the child was 14 and it's not Christmas Eve, what happens? He doesn't land on roof. So that's the OR operator. It takes two operands, which are going to be expressions that give a Boolean value, and it's going to return a Boolean value of true or false. And one other thing to note here as well is that we can, well, one thing we should do here is something I just noticed, is that the age here, there's no lower bound on the age. We're just saying if the child is younger than 8, but suppose Santi is really cutting back on his resources and he needs to make sure not to be delivering toys to newborn babies because they don't even believe in him yet. They're not conscious enough. So he wants children to have a level of consciousness before he comes to them. They have to have developed sufficient imagination to believe that he's real. So let's just say arbitrarily that they must be older than 3. So no, older than 2. So age is greater than 2. So now we have changed this variable here to make the condition more exclusive. We're tightening, we're having a lower bound and an upper bound on whether Santa is real, and we're using the AND, logical AND operator again here, and we have two Boolean expressions here, and they're both going to evaluate either true or false. Age is going to be greater than 2 or not, and age is going to be less than 8 or not, and then they'll be ANDed together, so both must be true. Now, how does this work? You can see this is a bit more complicated than the expressions that we've been looking at already, and we've got 3 different operators, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different values or variables in there. So how does it work? Well, we know what happens here is that the precedence, operator precedence, comes into play, and those operators that have higher precedence are going to execute first. So we know that from the operator precedence table, when we look it up, is that these comparison operators have the highest precedence, so they're going to go first. And when there's 2 of them, they evaluate from left to right, so the right will go second and this left hand side will go first. And then this one here is going to happen because the AND operator has lesser precedence than these 2, and then we're going to go over to this assignment operator because that has very low precedence. Now that's quite complicated, and not easy to remember. But the long and short of it is this is just going to work as we would expect. But it may not be apparent to someone else reading your code what we intended here. So what we can use is we can use parentheses to tidy this up. And this makes it clear to someone reading our code and to future us that this belongs together and that's going to execute first. And then this also belongs together and that's going to execute first. So they're going to execute before this guy, most importantly. And the other thing that this demonstrates is that we can chain different operators together to build up expressions with different operands. So for instance, when we were checking whether to put the presents under the tree or not, we were anding these two together, but we also might want to add in another and here, which is good, for instance. You check whether the child is good, so you can see we have multiple ands here, and they're going to be evaluated from right to left, and they need to all be true for this to become true, because you can see that this one is going to be true, and then that's going to be ANDed with the result of these two, which needs to be true. So we're chaining expressions together, and that is a very basic introduction to the logical operators and how you might use them in PHP.